Hello. Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Jemiah Sayas, the Senior Director. I lead Developer Relations and Technical Marketing at New Relic. I got you for 20 minutes, right? So I'll try to make it an interesting one. What I'll be talking about today is the process of optimizing your AI workloads, focusing on Amazon Bedrock, but we're going to do this from an observability standpoint, right? Like thinking about the type of data that you need and how you leverage it to understand what's going on within your AI models. So I do have a few slides. I normally try not to do too many, and then what I'll do is dive directly into the platform for a live demo. Hopefully the demo gods are with us today, but if not, I'll make sure that we got resources and everything sent out as soon as possible. All right, so you all ready? Perfect, let's do it. All right, so I'll talk about a few things. We'll talk about market trends, AI monitoring, and then, like I said, that demo. So let's see, show of hands. Anybody heard of AI in the last year, 2 years? No one, right? Like no one in the crowd has heard of AI, generative AI, what it's doing in the entire software development landscape, what it's doing with regards to how folks are adopting and leveraging technology, right? But right now at an enterprise level, over 70% of all enterprise organizations are exploring generative AI, right, within their product. They're offering for users, trying to figure out how can they use artificial intelligence to increase velocity on innovation, and also how can they use it internally with their engineering teams, right, to increase velocity of their release cycle. So that's a lot of what a lot of developers are going through at the moment, with the idea that over 40% of enterprise apps will have a conversational version of AI embedded before the end of 2024. So they don't have much time, right? We're about 3 weeks away before we need to hit that number, but that's what we were seeing in the industry, with about 75% of all users concerned about misinformation, privacy, regulation when it comes down to AI, and understanding what actually is being accessed with information that's being provided, which led to earlier this year the president putting out an executive order on mandatory changes needed to make AI more safe and secure, with rolling compliance coming in. All right, so what does this look like? What new challenges are we being introduced through this growth of adoption of Gen AI and other forms of artificial intelligence? One is an increase in application complexity, right? Our tech stacks are starting to look absolutely different than they have before, and we've gone through this journey before, right? So we've gone from monolithic applications into distributed services, and now AI is coming in and changing and adding different types of tooling, new databases, new things that you have to think about with regards to your orchestration and how you store, manage the privacy of your data, and so on and so forth. It's creating a new type of telemetry data. So telemetry data is the key for understanding the way that your system health is, right? So when you're using any form of application, it's creating things like metrics, events, logs that developers use to go in and understand when they have errors, traces that help you understand a call stack, right? So how different services are working together. And AI is changing the way that we're looking at telemetry data. It's introducing new types of data, bias, hallucinations, toxicity, or new types of data that we have to pay attention to, right? And then it's bringing in a new world of security and compliance, right? One part of users deciding whether to adopt our AI applications or services is whether they trust it or not, right? And building trust is notoriously hard, and it's absolutely easy to lose it, right? It takes one mistake before a user goes away and never comes back. So those are some of the things that we have to think about as we're exploring this new technology. All right, so at New Relic, we were the first in the industry to introduce end-to-end APM for AI applications, right? So thinking about how can we empower engineers to build and run AI apps confidently by giving you, one, a complete view of your entire tech stack, but with an additional context of the way that your AI applications are performing, the way that your vector databases are performing, giving you the insight that you need to start to make decisions around how do you manage performance versus cost. And this is what it looks like with New Relic, right? So New Relic's a full stack observability platform, and one of the offerings that we have is AI monitoring amongst everything else that's provided, right? Is everyone familiar with the idea of observability? All right, we got 3 or 4 people, so just to level set, Observability is the process of understanding your system health based off of the data that's output by your apps, your services, your infrastructure. Easy way to think about it, right? If you were driving a car, in your car, your dashboard would be observability. You can look at your dashboard and understand your speed, engine temperature, your oil, tire pressure, things like that. That's the same information that you need to understand the performance of not just your AI applications, but your entire tech stack. Right, so what we're trying to allow you to do, one is to debug your applications faster, right? So understanding what's actually happening when a request is made, what does a response look like coming from the server, what are all the methods being called in between that complete user journey. We want to help you balance application performance and cost. I think that's a normal thing that everyone within an engineering organization is trying to figure out. How do we get peak app performance without completely blowing up our budget, right? So which models should we use? How many tokens are we using? What does this mean with regards to what I'm spending on Bedrock? And then how to choose the right model, right? So that's what I want to show you in this demo. We'll take a look at how you can leverage some of the tooling in the platform to see exactly what's going on and start to drive some of those decisions. And another one that we have is how to ensure user privacy. So with us, we're able to create drop filters where you can completely remove specific attributes or tables, right? So I want to remove anything that looks like a social security number that may have been passed in inside of user requests. That's going to protect my users and my organization, right? So I'm stripping out that PII so we don't have any issues to worry about. So I'm going to switch over into the demo. Hopefully that wasn't too many slides. Let's take a look at what some of this. All right, so for the purpose of this type of presentation, I built out this AI chatbot app, right? So it's a tool that'll explain how to play different games. Nothing complicated, but I did want to do a few things. I can select the specific architecture, so I'm going to use Node. It's on Bedrock. For this example, we're using Claude 3 Sonnet, and then I'm just sending the data into my staging backend. So that's what's happening here. And the way that you'd use the tool is you ask it to either play a game with you or explain a game, and it'll have the conversation with you. It can play the game, and it'll teach you the rules. So I think I have, let's see. Let's play tic-tac-toe. Hopefully this is just working. All right, so we're waiting on a response. Wi-Fi isn't great, so things may take a little bit longer. But here we go, right? So it's basically come back with some rules for tic-tac-toe, and if I wanted, I can go back and forth with the chatbot and play a couple games. And I just wanted to show you the application that I'll be using, though this isn't the actual focus of the demo, right? But this is what's reporting data into New Relic. So I'm just gonna switch over into my actual account. Right, but so when I just made that request, a lot of things happened in the back end. I made a request, it went to the LLM, it tried to understand what I wanted, made a call out to the vector database, and all these different interactions happened before the application actually provided me with a response. And so that's what this data is showing. The good thing about the way that we built it is that it's not just your AI transactions that I'm showing. This is actually your complete stack from an APM standpoint. So this is a chat application. It's leveraging AI. So I have this AI monitoring section. But what we're going to show you is transaction time, throughput, error rates, all those things in details. And then we give you some details around what's going on with the actual AI app, which I'll dive into because that's where I really want to pay attention to. So I think I said earlier, with starting to optimize your apps, there's a balance between trying to figure out how to optimize for cost, how to optimize for performance. You need to understand where your users may be experiencing errors. And then there's a part where there's, privacy, right? Being able to protect users' information. So what I'm looking at now is data around my total requests and responses coming in to this application. So I can see that I've had about 54 requests with a percentage of change, about how long it takes for the application to respond. So 27 seconds, it's actually taken a bit longer than it did compared to a few days ago. The amount of tokens that I'm using per response, and the percentage of errors that my user is experiencing when they're using this tool, right? So it's gonna give me that detail up front and let me know kind of like what the status of health looks like for this particular AI service. And I can see this data over a time series chart, but where I want to pay attention to is the actual response section a bit lower in the screen, right? So this is the actual requests that are coming in and out of this tool, and that's where I want to pay attention to. So as you can see, all of these are using Claude. It tells me the number of completions, the amount of tokens that the individual requests use, and the duration of time that it took for the complete interaction to happen, right? And so if I were to take a look at the duration, I can see that, oh, let me zoom in, see if I can not hurt everyone's eyes in the crowd. Oh, what happened? Okay. Oh. I think the Zoom. There we go. All right. So I just wanted to make it easier for everyone to see. Sorry that took a little bit of time, right? But if I were experiencing some negative performance in the app, right? Let's say I'm getting alerted that users are experiencing slow response time, like the time that it takes to complete a transaction is a bit too long, they're starting to leave. What I need to do is come in and understand, well, what's actually causing that to happen and what does slow look like. So filtering by the duration, I can see there are a bunch of requests that are taking 2-3 seconds, so on and so forth, going all the way down. It looks like the majority of the time that it takes to complete a response is somewhere around 10 to 15 seconds. But I have a few requests that are actually taking over 20 seconds, right? So I'm like, okay, well, let me look at one of those and see what's happening. So I'm just gonna select this particular interaction. So what I want to do is get an understanding of what's happened in this interaction and identify where I may need to optimize my code, use a different service, or work with my engineering teams to provide a better quality of service to my users. So it's going to provide me with the request duration, tokens for this particular request, and show me every single interaction that was needed in order to complete this user's journey, right? So this took 27 seconds. It used over 1,500 tokens. Then what I can see is every single step along the user journey of completing this transaction. So this was teaching them how to play tic-tac-toe. And what I want to do is look at this holistically. So in order to do that, I'm going to turn off showing just the AI spans, and I want to look at the entire request for every single method that was called. So looking at this thread, I can see that we're using Bedrock, Claude. It's starting to parse and figure out what the game rules are. I want to come down a bit further, right? So it looks like there is a few invoke commands. I could see what's happening in these specific commands, right? So I can get details around the duration of this step, all of the attributes on the request. I can look at the actual message and see what's going on. So the AI assistant is basically saying, in order for me to understand what does tic-tac-toe say about humanity, there's a few things that I need to do. One, I need to understand the rules of tic-tac-toe, and it's needing to call out on a philosophical implication, right? So it's using two tools. And so I want to go back into, hit the wrong X. I want to go back into that call stack and look at those two method calls that it has to make. There it is. So I'm going to refilter, go back into that same request. Sorry, the connection's a little slow, so things are taking a bit of time. I'm gonna turn off just the AI spans, and I wanna look for those two methods, right? So I can see one of them happens above, where it's invoking the call out to Claude, where it's getting the game rules. Everything here looks really short, right? So this is happening lightning fast. But when we come down a bit further in the call stack, I can see that this tool call for philosophize where it's starting to understand not only the rules of tic-tac-toe, but to philosophize around what it means to be human. This is actually taking a really long time. So if I was an engineer working on this tool, this is where I want to start exploring. One, either how to resolve the amount of time that this specific call is taking, or figuring out a different tool that I could use to provide this functionality and then optimize this service, right? But the only way to understand that is to see what are users going through, how much time the individual requests are taking at each step, and then start to make decisions with my engineering team. Right. So another thing that I want to call out is that you need to understand errors, right? So I mentioned that we had about a 25%, 26% error rate. So we're making it easy for you to understand your errors in addition to each stage of the particular interaction between your application, your database, your LLM. So when the platform identifies that there's an error at any particular step within your user's journey, we're going to highlight that in red, right, and provide you with all of the details of that specific stage, the attributes on the specific request, allow you to understand what function was being called and the specific error details, making it easy for you to go in, see what errors are impacting your users, and then start to resolve those to provide a better user experience. So that's two of the ways that you could actually use this particular app data to start driving optimizations in your AI tooling. Another thing that you have to do is decide which models should you use, right? So this is for individual requests, but sometimes you need to take a high-level view and start to look down and start doing comparisons. So I'm going to shift over into a different application that's using other models, and we do that using the model inventory, right? So with model inventory, I can see every model that I've used, I've selected over the last 24 hours. It's going to provide me with the number of requests of each model, the average response time, tokens, and error rates, right? So with this view, I'll get an understanding of how I'm using different models to provide functionality to my AI service, but then I can start driving decisions around, well, okay, so requests that are coming in using GPT 4.0 Mini have, double the amount of tokens that it takes to complete a request than one of the other versions of GPT, right? Or when I'm using GPT-4 Turbo, I'm seeing a 20% error rate, which is 4 times the amount of any other service, right? So it's starting to allow me to see the performance of my individual models as my users are using my services, and I can start to drive decisions around where I should be taking, the development of my tooling. So this is an overview. I could do that same comparison strictly for errors, looking at that detail over time by model, for performance, and then as well for cost, which allows me to optimize for each of those instances that it's going to take for us to get an enterprise level AI app out into production. All right. So I'm going to end the demo here because I'm right at the end of time, and I wanted to make sure that I leave a minute or so for any questions that we may have. So I'm going to pause and leave it open to see if anyone has any questions. Yep. So how do you identify the AI steps? So I'm going to go back into just one of the calls that I showed earlier. By default, the platform's going to do it for you. So when you're pulling up your trace, it's going to collapse and show you just the specific AI interactions. And then in these interactions, you can see what's happening, right? So I'm using a completion in Bedrock and calling out an invoke model, right? So now that's going to be functionality that's going off to Claude to build a response, and then so on and so forth. So everything at first is just AI interaction. Then if I want to see it in context of my entire stack, I'll expand it by just turning off that checkbox, and I'll see everything. Oh, I can't hear. I'm sorry. So we can read the interactions that's happening within the specific transaction. So we know which packages, which tools, which database, which LLMs you may be calling. So anytime that we identify that the transaction is making a call to LLM, pulling data from a vector database, we know it's an AI transaction, and then it moves over into this particular start of the part of the platform. All right, and I guess that's it. I'm out of time. Thank you all so much for joining me for this session. If you have any questions, the New Relic booth is just over here to your right. I'll be happy to chat as long as you want.